Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you everything you need to know about Warcraft logs for raids and as well for Mythic Plus. If you're already familiar with a couple pieces of the site, check out our chapters as we have quite a bit to go over. A great way to find out logs and look for logs from the very beginning is Lorrgs.io. We've made videos going over this as well, but this is great to start getting a good idea of cooldown timings. I wouldn't always just recommend smashing every single time the cooldowns that are being selected for this, but it's a good way to get yourself started. So all you have to do is go to the site, click on which healer that you want to focus on, click on the boss fight that you want to focus on at the top, and all these different options are arrayed in front of you. It's actually quite a bit of a mess. So from the very beginning, you want to make sure you get rid of all of these externals and start trimming down what you actually want to be focusing on. And so a great way to make sure that you have a good idea as to what's going on is to start trimming away at all these different pieces right here. And you can even trim down on some of the boss mechanics if you wanted. Some of these you absolutely want to make sure you kind of keep an eye on. It just sort of depends on which encounter. So like the TikTok canisters is a huge part of playing and healing through Chrome King Gallywix, as you might want to see, oh, what gets cast at this specific time? You can do that with the boss abilities right there. That helps with your fight familiarity in a big way. Now, whenever you're looking at, say, a Holy Pally, they're going to have lots and lots of cast out of Divine Toll because there's cooldown reduction. So as you can see, people are usually using it on cooldown. So let's focus on the wings timing, where if you're seeing the cast of wings when you click on it right here, they're starting at around the same time, and you can see they're being cast at very, very similar times throughout the encounter. The same principle can go into your defensives, like Divine Protection. The more you see the defensives getting used at the same moments, the same opportunities in time, probably a good sign that that's a very deadly area. Same thing goes for whenever tempered potions are getting utilized. When are they getting utilized? When's Divine Shield getting utilized? When's Aura Mastery being cast? Now, these are best early on in progression to start studying logs. So the first month or 2 months of an expansion are probably the best times to find really good logs that are less cheesy and less parse hoary and everything along those lines. But it can still be a very good tool to get a good understanding of how people are utilizing their abilities. If you're ever looking for which healers are strong or strong on certain encounters, you can use the statistics tab in the top left corner. You can then go into whichever expansion that you like. It's also great if you're doing research on what was good in the past. Just click on statistics, it'll pop it up, and then you go over into healing. You don't want to go into HPS, but you want to go into healing in general. This is going to show the top healers over a range of 2 weeks, current standings, using normalized scores. This is all for Mythic difficulty, but you can always go to specific boss fights with a tab up here at the top and get a better understanding right there. So you can then scroll down, see which healers are high performing, and then use the boss encounter set up here to look at who's the best on Mugsy right now and what the range is. So these dots at the far edge are the max percentile parses. They're the highest performing parses. You can then see the range, the mean, the median, the mode, all that fun stuff from math class back in the day. You can see all those kind of things there to see the average performance over time, how many parses are going out onto these encounters, how big of a sample size really that there's going to be. And of course, right above it, you have the Archon website, which gives you meta builds, tier lists. It gives you a lot of breakdown using this data as well. So Archon's also incredibly, incredibly helpful. Now, healer parses, of course, don't always mean that you're the best player on Earth or anything like that. But if you're looking for how you want to optimize some specific parts of how you heal in general, this is a great way to get started with that sort of process. So first, you're going to go to raids, you're going to go into your ranking system, and then you have all these tabs up here at the start. I always would recommend that you select US and EU. A lot of times the Chinese region does some odd stuff when it comes to their parses and everything along those lines. So I'd predominantly, if you're looking to study and copy people, start off with US and EU. From there, you can sort between the specific healers, even specific specializations, hero talent trees, factions, eye levels, patch as well, which is quite important. And there is some as well for external buffs that you can have also. This makes it really easy for you to sort find the encounter, see what buffs like Source Magic or Innervate that people might have access to, see what talents that they're going to be running with some of the tabs that they have right there. And of course, it's going to allow you to start deep diving into the logs. Now, you can also do this for dungeons. In the dungeon tab at the top left, you'll then go into all reports, or if you're specifically looking for one dungeon, you can do that too. You can go for all reports in Operation Floodgate. And then if you wanted to go find somebody who had played a Disc Priest in a Floodgate, then it'll show you every single log of a Disc Priest logging a Floodgate. But then you can set it to a keystone level, so you can see every single plus 18 that featured a Disc Priest in it at this specific level. And that's not all. You can then click into that log, then it'll show you the Floodgate run with a Disc Priest in it. There you go, you're able to see this is the composition that they ran. And there's a really cool feature called Replay, which will then allow you to go step by step through the dungeon. And you'll be able to see in the bottom right here, their trash percentage, what their pull is, what their route is, and so much more. There's a lot that goes on with this. So as it starts going into the instance, you can start seeing as they start going across the room, you can see what's going on. You also can then zoom in, click on the player that you want to make sure that you're watching what they're doing. And you can even start clicking up in these tabs. If other people are sort of hiding the character, you can just start clicking on these and then it'll remove them. And then you'll be able to just see, I just want to see Sunk Bob. Let's go find him on the map. That way you'll be able to click on the name and then you'll be able to see the spells that are being casted, the next spell that's going to be cast, and the buffs that they have going on. So the replay function allows you to look in the moment as to what's happening on the encounter to get a better idea as to what people are casting at these specific moments in time. And you can compare it to the dungeon pull to see that there's a blood warper, there's snipers, there's inspectors, soldiers, all that kind of stuff. So it helps you orient where you're at on the map, what the pull is that they're doing, and then you can go step by step through the casts. Now, this also can apply for raids as we transition here into the other tabs that we have going on right now. One of the big things that I want to start with is going to be the overall healing breakdown. Now, keep in mind, this works just as well for dungeons as it does for raids. Whenever you get into a specific log, you click the healing tab up here at the top, and then when you scroll down, you're then going to see the other characters in the group. Just clicking on the name then selects the character, which you can do in the top left corner right here with this drop-down menu. Then you can start seeing the healing breakdown. What's really important onto this is looking at things like overheal, HPS, the average casts that somebody has going on in these tabs right here, and then it allows you to better sort of compare your logs to somebody else's to understand where's the healing coming from, what's the proper sort of distribution. You also feature a chart up here at the top with a lot of different colors for the abilities. And so if you wanted to remove, rejuvenation and just see what other abilities are producing healing, you can do that. You can see the contribution of Rejuve. You can see when Flourish gets utilized, things like that. But it also gets made easier with a cast tab. The cast tab right here on the top right is probably your most important tab to just learn to be a better healer in general. Right here from the start, you're going to be able to have a whole mess of options. So if you want to select or deselect, you just need to click on the names here, or you can click on the dead space in between the ability names. Now, if you clicked on the actual ability name itself, it will open up a new tab and take you to wowhead.com, tell you what the ability is, and then if you look in the top left, you'll see the spell ID for rejuvenation. So that's a nice way if you want to look up something specific, which we are going to use a little bit later. Now, one of the important things that you might want to do is look at a couple fundamentals for Resto Druid. For example, it's always important whenever they cast Convoke the Spirits to preemptively use Nature's Swiftness. And right here, you can see the yellow bar that is Nature's Swiftness is being cast before Convoke the Spirits is getting activated. From there, you're able to see, okay, when is Flourish being cast? Well, it's right after Convoke is ending. And so you already are able to see basic fundamentals for how you're setting up your healing as a Resto Druid. And the same principles apply for a variety of other healers. For example, if you wanted to go play Holy Priest, you might select Prayer of Mending and look at, on this encounter, where are the cast of Prayer of Mending? Who are the cast of Prayer of Mending going on to? So you can mouse over and see who's getting those Prayer of Mending casts. And then what you always want to look for with any ability that has a static cooldown is you want to have nice even spaces or pretty close together spaces between these casts. Holy Priest is an ability called Epiphany, which allows them to cast it a little bit faster. So sometimes you see these casts really close together, but in general, they're very evenly spread out, and there's not large gaps in between your spell casts, which might mean that you missed a cast or something along those lines. Now, there's also instant casts that you have to keep in mind. One of the biggest things when you are dealing with instant cast spells is noticing the difference between what's instant cast and potentially free or what's a hard cast. Shaman sees this a lot of times with Chain Heal, which is all these gray bars that you see. Now, the left side bar is actually your time spent casting the spell. That's what this top left side is at. So any of these short little nubs of a bar, those are instant cast Chain Heals that are coming from your lively totems from Totemic Resto Shaman. The slightly taller ones are going to be Chain Heal casts that have proc effects to them. Things that are accelerating the cast speed for your Chain Heal. Your Whirling Elements, when you drop Surging Totem, will accelerate those. You have a few different buffs as a Shaman that'll accelerate those. And so basically you'll be able to see, hey, these are the ones that are buffed. And of course, the ones at the very tippy top are the ones that don't have any sort of casts attached to them that are accelerating their casts. So these are going to be ones that might be a little bit more expensive. A really good way to look at this if you played a Holy Priest is being able to see the tallest of the Prayer of Healings, because these tall ones, these absolute tallest ones, are ones that are not buffed by Prayer Circle. So you can infer anything that's really high up here is a Prayer of Healing cast that was not discounted by Prayer Circle, which gives you a 20% cost discount and a cast discount. So you can see these bars right here that are about a 1.5 second cast. Those are ones that are buffed. Those are great. The taller ones, it's not the end of the world, but it might be costing you a bit of extra mana because of how the spec is going to work. Now, you see a lot of spells and a lot of stuff in your face when you're trying to go over this, which can make it difficult to understand the sequence of when you cast a spell. How do I cast a spell? In what order? And a great way to do this is to go to your cast tab, but then go to your timelines or events tab. Both of these work great. I'll show both of them to you as well, but we're gonna go over Small's log for Chrome King Gallywix. Now, when you go and hit on the events tab, this is gonna show when he completes specific events. So at the beginning of the fight, he casts Shadow Word Pain, casts Penance, Power Infusion, casts Shield. It shows what is cast, who is the caster on the left side, who is casted on the right, and when on the far left side. This allows you to go in order to see cast sequences, which is fantastic for a variety of healers. You know, Druids, Disc Priest, Preservation are going to have more specific cast sequencing for certain events, and they're not alone, but you can use this on every single healer to help you better understand what's happening, and a little bit of the minutia that happens for specs as well. Now, this is the beginning of the Chrome King Gallywix encounter, and what you can see is that Dark Reprimand, the penance, is being cast by the Disc Priest, but also Glide is being cast. This shows that he's playing the Evoker, the Drakthir racial, and he's able to cast Penance and double jump and move while channeling his Penance to have an easier time maneuvering around the boss encounter. This is showing he's casting this and the Glide at the exact same time, or back to back, you could say, as the channel is going on and not interrupting it. And then you can start seeing some specifics about, for example, casting a Dark Reprimand, then casting your defensive, then casting a Smite, then casting a Penance again to sort of break up the timing for when you do it. You can also use the timeline event. This I like as well, but it gets a little messy when you have a lot of spells going on all at once. So keep that in mind. What you'll see is a huge bar that you can start scrolling between, showing when things are cast, and it's a little bit prettier as well. But you also have to keep in mind that you have to, scroll down for some of these lesser cast abilities. So if you wanted to specifically see, hey, when is Premonition of Insight and Premonition of Piety getting utilized? Well, you can see they get utilized here, but then you have to scroll up and make sure you can see what are the other casts that are going off. So he Mind Blast into an Insight, into a Shadow of Pain, into a Piety. And that way you get a better understanding of what's going on, but it's just a different view than the Events tab is going to actually end up giving you. I really like seeing this for specs with whenever I'm learning something new with very specific cast sequences. You can see this is also a Mugsy fight going on, and right off the bat, you're able to see the Preservation of Ochre hits Verdant Embrace into a Dream Breath, and you can see the Empower starts and the Empower ends. Then you can see the cast of Engulf. Then you can see when Tip the Scales is being utilized and when Stasis is both being generated and being released. So in this encounter, I believe they prep Stasis in advance. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to hit Control F. I'm going to type in Stasis, and we're going to scroll through a little bit. This is going to be 2 minutes into the encounter where we see Stasis Store being cast. This is where they Verdant Embrace, Dream Breath is cast and ended, Stasis gets cast, followed up with the Engulf casts, Tip the Scales, and Spirit Bloom. As a result, this is where you're going to be able to see, oh, how do they build up their Stasis? How do they set it up properly? Now they figured out the store, and then here is the release of your Stasis. Now, of course, there's only so many Engulf casts that you can have going off and everything like that, so you can infer that these are just 2 Engulf casts into a Spirit Bloom that are going off, followed by 2 other casts of, or 1 other cast of like a natural Engulf. That's why having the 2 different perspectives is always super helpful when you can pull up the timeline, and then you can of course see the exact spell cast at the exact points in time. So we can once again go to that 2-minute mark once more, and then be able to see the exact same thing around the exact same spot. Stasis store is marked separately than release, and then you can scroll up, start looking at which of the casts are being used to store the ability. Once again, Verdant Embrace, into the Dream Breath, into the double Engulf casts, into Tip the Scales, and then there was the Spirit Bloom that we just passed. Like I said, it's not as easy to sort through this timeline feature as it is the events tab as well. Now, let's say that you're a player like, I don't know, Holy Pally, who does a lot of single target healing, and you have your beacon buffs, and you want to know the best target for your beacon, or maybe you're a shaman with Earth Shield or something, and you want to think about who is the best target for your second Earth Shield. Well, there's a really cool tool if you go under Damage Taken. Damage taken will show all the damage taken, of course, in the fight. It'll show it in the peak. You see this in details. You know what this is. Now, there's a thing called EHRPS. This is effective healing required per second, okay? What this does is it tells you, in pretty layman's terms, who needs healing. That's about the easiest way to understand it. Who needs extra healing after defensives, after leech, after self-healing, all of that kind of stuff goes on. And this should not shock you in terms of results. It's hunters, it's enhanced shamans, you know, even devastation of ochre, it's boomkin. Who are the people that need healing? About as simple as you can do it. And if you really want to understand on an encounter, is somebody struggling? Is somebody just squishier than everybody else? The EHRPS in the damage taken tab will show you directly what's going on. This is incredibly helpful for understanding who needs healing, who might need a beacon, who might need some extra support onto an encounter, and also who's using their defensives well. If, for example, you see that, you know, there's a difference in the mages or something, and we assume nobody died or something, somebody might be using their defensives a little bit better. And that's a really key way to understand how to use your defenses properly on an encounter. Are you requiring more healing as a healer than others? For example, if you were a healer and you were like way up here at the top, maybe you're not using your defensives very well. A good example is Mistweaver has a lot of active defensives. So if you have bad timing at a diffuse magic or your fortifying brew, well, you might be really high on this list. But if you're using them extremely well, you can see Mistweavers are near the bottom of the list. And this is an excellent way to understand who's needing healing on the progression encounter, who might be a good beacon target, and also who's using their defenses well. Now, if you want to make sure that you compare your logs to somebody, say, better than you can use this compare feature in the top right. So first, find a log that you want to be able to pull from. We'll use Clarius, the Wowhead writer for Holy Pallies, and I'm going to compare his log to my log from poor old Jack Be Hammered. What you want to do is, once you hit the compare in the top right, then you want to do a manual comparison of the report, unless you're in the same group. You can compare 2 people in the same report with this feature, just selecting 2 different players, or you can, of course, use this manual comparison. So you want to compare with a URL, And then what it's going to do is it shows you the Warcraft logs report / whole bunch of letters and numbers. You want to take that whole bunch of letters and numbers. So I'm going to go back to my setup, warcraftlogs.com/reports. This big mess of letters and numbers. I'm going to copy that, go back to the compare, paste it in right here. Then this is going to put up a direct comparison between Jak Be Hammered on Tychondrius and Clarius. And from the beginning, you go to the summary page. You can then compare and see. Oh, wait 1 sec. I got to make sure I get the right version of our boss fight, because there's 2. So I think since we are in pink, I think it was the first kill. So that also happens when there's multiple reports, is you have to make sure that you select the correct report that actually features the character that you wanted. And so once that is selected, there you go. We get to see the raid composition and everything like that. And you can start comparing the 2 characters together. I think I actually was on the correct one here. So there you go. We can go into, the healing breakdown. And then you can start comparing. Here's Jak Be Hammered. And then you can select another character up at the top. So we're going to select Jak Be Hammered, and then we're also going to select Clarius. So I got my ass kicked in terms of the healing, but in my defense, I have like no gear. So, you know, you can even compare and look at, you know, like the intellect levels or something like that. When it comes to the summary tab, you can start looking at some of the talents and start comparing the differences that you might have, for example, in the talent tree. Like if you're missing something related to Light of Dawn, that might be pretty helpful if you're not really casting much Light of Dawn. You can see the damage difference in terms of how much damage that you're dealing, how much healing are you getting from certain abilities. All of these things you're going to find in the summary tab, and it'll allow you to get just a quick insight into what's going on. Then you'll be able to go to the cast tab, and this is probably the best way to do it. And then you'll be able to look at how often each of these abilities are being cast on the left side by Clarius and the right side by me. You can then see how many casts of Eternal Flame, how many casts of Light of Dawn, how many casts per minute that you're actually getting. That's what the CPM stands for. And so this will allow you to have a bit better understanding of, I'm not doing as much healing as somebody else. Why is that? You can start directly comparing some of these casts. Now, it also allows you to start comparing some buff uptimes as well. This uptime percentage right here is incredibly helpful because you'll see I had 37% uptime on Wings. He had 40%. Wings is a good cooldown. And having more uptime obviously is going to be bringing you a lot more healing. You can also go into the buffs tab as well and have a bit better comparison. There's an insane amount of buffs in the game, just in general. So I would always advise use Control F, type in Avenging Wrath, and then you'll be able to see, hey, okay, there's 11 casts here, 11 casts there. Here's the uptime, and here's the uses of these abilities. Then you'll be able to see firsthand, okay, what are the Blessings of Dusk and where's the Blessing of Dawn, and then you can see how well value is getting yielded from those abilities. You can directly compare your logs to somebody else and get a better understanding for what you're doing wrong, what they're possibly doing right. Lastly, I want to show you something incredibly cool. This is the query section. Now, there's an insane amount of queries. If you have some awesome ones that you want to share as well, be sure to drop them in the description down below and like and subscribe while you're at it. But this is basically where you can look at very specific and advanced things. You can look at how much damage somebody dealt to a target when it was at this level of HP. You can get very much into the minutia of specific things. They even have an intro into how queries and expressions work, but I'm going to just show you step by step a very important one. First, on Styx Bunkjunker, this is an encounter where you need to make sure that you are keeping people alive through some of the deadly targeted spells that go out. And one of the biggest ones is going to be that pylon that just zaps 3 players. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to find that damage. We know in the encounter what the ability is, and so we're going to go to our damage taken, and then we're going to go to our damage taken from ability. This is where we're going to scroll down, find our prototype power coil. I'm going to click directly on the icon right here. And by doing so, it opens up a tab where it shows you, hey, this is the prototype power coil. This shows you what it is, what it does. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to the healing because I want to see how much healing the healers did to somebody who was getting zapped by the power coil. Are healers actually spot healing? Okay, go to queries, Then we're looking for a specific buff or debuff that we want to isolate. Then we're going to make sure it's applied only to friendlies. And then only match if the aura is present on target. From there, you have an ability list right here in the drop-down menu. You're going to scroll down until you find what you need. You can also type it in as well. That also can work if you know exactly what you're looking for. And then sometimes it has multiple different spell IDs, so you want to find like the specific one that relates to your ability. So now I am specifically telling Warcraftlogs I want to find a buff or debuff that is applied to friendlies and only match if the aura is present on target. Then we're going to set this to a filter. And a filter will remove any results that don't match the pin, and then we are going to create a pin. By creating this pin, it brings us back to the healing page where we just were, and now it's showing me who is doing the brunt of the spot healing, who's doing the single target healing to those players. Who the players are by just mousing over this. I can see that Mildred's taking a ton of damage, or Trothkar is taking a ton of damage. And then I can see big portion of the Disc Priest healing, some 28%, 27%, is just power word shield. I can see that Aqua's primarily Eternal Flame and Holy Shock, direct focused heals, but also they're putting beacons on the targets, or they already did have beacon on those targets. You can then see who is being healed, what spells are healing them, who's taking that additional healing. Now there's an enormous amount of additional things that you can be checking out. The resource tab, for example, showing somebody's mana consumption is always a really good tool where you can select the player, hit the drop down menu, go check out their mana, see how it ramps or scales over the course of the encounter, where they're getting mana regen from, what spells they're getting it from. The summary tab, which we had gone over before, showing their stats, showing their talents, showing their setup, showing their gear optimization. You can see a lot of information when it comes to Warcraftlogs, but finding the most important pieces, I think, is absolutely the most key. When it comes to deaths, this is always a really good way to understand what happened when somebody perishes. You can then see what ability is a one-shot, for example, what might be a slow death, by going through this events tab. This is the death tab, and you can either see it in a table or in an event to understand the health level of the player, what sort of healing they were taking before they ended up dying. These things are incredibly, incredibly helpful, and they have a lot of drop-down menus. That's what this arrow is right here, to show you the healing effect, the buffs that are on the target, what additional effects are helping those players out. So there's a lot to dig into, but I hope that this helps you get started and better understanding how to utilize Warcraftlogs to be able to maximize your own performance, whether it's in raids or in keys, because all these principles we showed you for raids also apply to Mythic Plus. Even though you don't see as many people focusing on Mythic Plus logging, there still are a lot of logs out there if you wanted to be digging them up. So huge thank you to you guys for checking out this video. If you liked it or you have any other bonus advice you guys would like to give other new players, be sure to leave it in the description down below. Huge love to our patrons for making all this content possible. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all next time.